What we do here is go back.
Four years later.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the
Everybody
procedure,
stay calm.
everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Everybody just calm down!
1 day later. Of all the unlikely places I thought that would do a kind of a deconstruction of Rotten Tomatoes, ladies and gentlemen, Vulture was that outlet. Vulture was that website. We've covered quite a few articles from Vulture in the past. Not very many of them have held very agreeable points of view that align with ours, which we know is fine. We can discuss and debate things, but we saw the screenshot in the opener that Rotten Tomatoes has been paying a PR firm for some reviews. Now, we'll go through a little bit of this, what exactly went on. Let's get into it, shall we? In 2018, a movie publicity company called Bunker 15 took on a new project, Ophelia, a feminist retelling of Hamlet starring Daisy Ridley. Critics who had seen early screenings published 13 reviews, 7 of them negative, which translated to a score of 46% on the all-important aggregation site Rotten Tomatoes. A disappointing outcome for a film with prestige aspirations and no domestic distributor. But just because the tomato meter says the title is rotten, scoring below 60%, it doesn't need to stay that way. Bunker 15 went to work. While most PR companies aim to get the attention of critics from the top publications, Bunker 15 takes a more bottoms-up approach, recruiting obscure, often self-published critics who are nevertheless part of the pool tracked by Rotten Tomatoes. In another break from standard practice, several critics say Bunker 15 pays them $50 or more for each review. These payments are not typically disclosed, and Rotten Tomatoes says it prohibits reviewing based on financial incentive, which is obviously a lie. In October of that year, an employee of the company emailed a prospective reviewer about Ophelia. It's a Sundance film, and the feeling is that it's been treated a bit harshly by some critics. I'm sure sky-high expectations were the culprit. So the teams involved feel like it would benefit from more input from different critics. More input from different critics is not very subtle code, and the prospective critic wrote back to ask what would happen if he hated the film. The Bunker 15 employee replied, of course, journalists are free to write whatever they like, but that's super nice ones, and there are more critics like this than I expected, often agreed not to publish bad reviews on their usual websites, but to instead quarantine them on a smaller blog that Rotten Tomatoes never sees. I think it's a very cool thing to do. If done right, the trick would help ensure that Rotten Tomatoes logged positive reviews but not negative ones. Between October 2018 and January 2019, Rotten Tomatoes added 8 reviews to Ophelia's score. 7 were favorable, and most came from critics who have reviewed at least one other Bunker 15 movie. The writer of a negative review says that Bunker 15 lobbied them to change it. If the critic wanted to give it a barely overall positive, then I do know the editors at Rotten Tomatoes and can get it switched, a Bunker 15 employee wrote. I also discovered another negative review of Ophelia from this period that was not counted by Rotten Tomatoes by a writer whose positive reviews of other Bunker 15 films have been recorded by the aggregator. Ophelia climbed the tomato meter to 62%, flipping the film to fresh. The next month, the distributor IFC Films announced that it acquired Ophelia for release in the U.S. And you can see right there, directly incentivizing critics through financial means that these films are going to get distribution deals if they are reviewed favorably, as opposed to being just below the favorable line. Which, if you think about it, is huge for a distributor because they don't want to take a chance on losing money. I mean, that's not why they're in the game. They want to make money. And if something is rotten, they're going to look at it not from a individualistic perspective of it's a good film that was judged harshly. No, they're going to look at it like, people are saying this, we're not going to touch it, it's toxic. Ophelia's production company, Covert Media, didn't return requests for comment. Bunker 15's founder, Daniel Harlow, says, "Wow, you are really reaching there," and disagrees with the suggestion his company buys reviews to skew Rotten Tomatoes. "We have thousands of writers in our distribution list. A small handful have set up a specific system where filmmakers can sponsor or pay them to have a film reviewed."
Bullshit. It's all bullshit.
The Ophelia affair is a useful microcosm for understanding how Rotten Tomatoes, which turned 25 in August, has come to function. The site was conceived in the early days of the web as a hot or not for movies. Now, it can make or break them, with implications for how films are perceived, released, marketed, and possibly even greenlit. The tomato meter may be the most important metric in entertainment, yet it's also erratic, reductive, and easily hacked. The studios didn't invent Rotten Tomatoes, and most of them don't like it, says the filmmaker Paul Schrader, but the system is broken. Audiences are dumber. Normal people don't go through reviews like they used to. Rotten Tomatoes is something the studios can game, so they do. And I love his sentiment that people are dumber.
He's out of line, but he's right.
And that is, again, a microcosm of the dumbing down of entertainment, the deconstruction of mythologies, built-up stories, IPs, and just turning them into this garbage, mass-produced, homogenized, much like all of mainstream entertainment now, homogenized trash, put out to low, let's face it, low attention span and oftentimes low IQ audiences who might look at something on a surface level but never dig any deeper because it satiated their need for that dopamine hit right then. Bang, bang. It just keeps coming because they know you have to keep these plebs, these smooth brains entertained somehow with their Marvel and their DC and blah, 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 and Ahsoka and all this other garbage that these people who are fighting a culture war are still watching. Now, that being said, there's some people I know that still watch this shit, still talk about it, but they never claim to be boycotting. They never claim to be fighting a culture war. They're simply trying to still cling and enjoy something that they loved for decades and decades, which in that case, my friends, I say, Godspeed and enjoy. I'm not going to judge you for that. But if you're sitting here and telling me how bad something is and still consuming it, then, well, you know, then I can kind of make fun of you. Now, you can look at me and say, well, don't you do the same thing? Well, I report on articles about entertainment, yes. But if it's a bad piece of media, odds are these days I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to watch it. I haven't watched Ahsoka. I haven't watched any of the Star Wars stuff. I did watch Boba Fett, which was a mistake. It was bad. My son wanted to watch Obi-Wan. I caught a couple episodes, but we never reviewed it. I'm not spending time doing videos like that. The last major thing I did like that was Gotham Knights, and I quit because it was nowhere near as fun as Batwoman to eviscerate. So people wanted to see me tear that show apart, and I did. Like I said, no money, just time invested in it, which the return on investment was good. In a recent interview, Quentin Tarantino, whose next film is reportedly called The Movie Critic, admitted he no longer reads the critic's work. "Today, I don't know anyone," he said in translation of his remarks, first published in French. "I'm told Manohla Dargis, she's excellent, but when I asked what are the 3 movies she loved and the 3 she hated in the last few years, no one can answer me because they don't care." This is probably because Rotten Tomatoes, with help from Yelp, Goodreads, and countless other review aggregators have desensitized us to the opinions of individual critics. Once upon a time, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert turned a no-budget documentary, Hoop Dreams, into a phenomenon using only their thumbs. But critical power like that has been replaced by the collective voice of the masses. A third of U.S. adults say to check Rotten Tomatoes before they go to the multiplex, and while movie ads used to tout the blurbage of Jeffrey Lyons and Peter Travers, now they're more likely to boast a film that has been certified fresh.
Smell shine.
Martin Scorsese says To filmmakers across the taste spectrum, Rotten Tomatoes is a scourge. It reduces the director to a content manufacturer and the viewer to an unadventurous consumer. Brett Ratner has called it the destruction of our business, but insiders acknowledge that it has become a crucial arbiter. Publicists say their jobs revolve around the site. Well, publicists are trash for the most part, let's be honest. But despite Rotten Tomatoes' reputed importance, it's worth a reminder. Its math stinks.
The numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for you.
Scores are calculated by classifying each other as either positive or negative and then dividing the number of positives by the total. That's the whole formula. Every review carries the same weight whether it runs in a major newspaper or a Substack with a dozen subscribers. If a review straddles positive and negative, too bad. I read some reviews of my own films where the writer might say that he doesn't think I pull something off, but boy, is it interesting in the way that I don't pull it off, says Schrader, a former critic. To me, that's a good review, but it would count as negative on Rotten Tomatoes. And I love this right here where it says there's no accounting for enthusiasm, no attempt to distinguish between extremely and slightly positive or negative reviews. That means a film can score a perfect 100 with just passing grades. In the old days, if an independent film got all 3-star reviews, that was like the kiss of death, says publicist number 2. But with Rotten Tomatoes, you can get all 3-star reviews, and it's fantastic. See, this is dumbing down the masses. Another problem, and where the trickery often begins, is that Rotten Tomatoes scores are posted after a movie receives only a handful of reviews, sometimes as few as 5, even if those reviews may be an unrepresentative sample. This is sort of like cable news networks declaring an election night winner after a single county reports its results. But the studios see it as a feature, since with a little elbow grease, they can sometimes fool people into believing a movie is better than it is.
What? What the fuck?
Studio is prepping the release of a new title. It'll screen the film for critics in advance. It's a film publicist's job to organize these screenings and invite the writers they think will respond the most positively. Then the publicist will set the movie's review embargo, in part so that its initial tomato meter score is as high as possible at the moment when it can have maximal benefits for word of mouth and early ticket sales. For example, in February, the tomato meter score of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania debuted at 79% based on its first batch of reviews. Days later, after more critics had weighed in, its ratings sank into the 40s. But the gambit may have worked. Quantumania had the best opening weekend of any movie in the Ant-Man series at $106 million. Its second weekend, with its rottenness more firmly established, the film's grosses slid 69%, the steepest drop-off in Marvel history. Well, from all accounts I've heard, haven't seen the movie, I heard it was trash. Absolute trash, and just terrible overall. And I know in the opening I showed all the review bombing news from 2019 surrounding Captain Marvel, because that was a huge story.
Is that like a personal attack or something? Or?
Rotten Tomatoes changed their entire want to see feature because of quote-unquote review bombing. If you have a want to see or don't want to see, you're allowed to use that feature if you don't want to see the movie. And the people that are out there screeching that if you don't want to see it, just ignore it. Well, no, if the feature's there, you're allowed to use it. It's not like you have to be worried about hurting the studio's feelings. I mean, if they're putting out garbage and people like the sycophants and the echo chamber are just gulping it up.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next products.
All of this would be one thing if Rotten Tomatoes were merely an innocent relic from Web 1.0 being preyed upon by Hollywood sharks. But the site has come a long way from its founding in 1998 by UC Berkeley grads. Rotten Tomatoes outlasted the .com bubble and was passed from one buyer to another, most recently in 2016. That year, Warner Brothers sold most of it to Fandango, which shares a parent company with Universal Pictures. If it sounds like a conflict of interest for a movie review aggregator to be owned by two companies that make movies and another that sells tickets to them, it probably is. Before the acquisition, Fandango had its own 5-star rating scale on its app and website, under which it was almost impossible for a movie to receive fewer than 3 stars. Since then, even the ostensibly well-intentioned changes it has made to Rotten Tomatoes have seemed to produce score-boosting side effects. Here is the crux of the issue right here we're going to talk about. Like I said, I showed this in the opening. Rotten Tomatoes also allows users to rate movies alongside critics. And 3 years after the Fandango deal, it changed the way these quote-unquote audience scores were calculated. Here's Vulture slipping right back into who Vulture actually is. Misogynist trolls had hijacked the platform, coordinating to tank women-led movies like Captain Marvel before they opened.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
As a fix, for users' reviews to count, they would need to verify that they bought tickets, which they could do most easily by purchasing them via Fandango. Therefore, Rotten Tomatoes incentivizing them to buy from Fandango by telling them, well, if you want to review the movie, you have to buy them from Fandango, which under the new rules, audience scores for tentpole movies have often gotten an early lift since most of the first weekend crowds are diehards who buy tickets in advance. In June, Ads for the Flash bragged about an audience score of 95% as of 6/14/23, which was that Wednesday. Showtimes began in international markets such as Belgium and Finland, but 2 days before the film's U.S. release, today, the score is 83%. And see, here's one of those movies right here. Troll target female-led blockbuster ahead of Captain Marvel. Rotten Tomatoes shuts him down. Oh, it's written by Kayla Epstein. I wonder if she's related to another Epstein. And here's the famous clip right here from our favorite plank of wood. The move has been widely characterized as a response to the long-standing complaints over a lack of gender and racial diversity on the site, and in criticism at large. A 2017 study found that 82% of Rotten Tomatoes reviews of the highest grossing movies of that year had been written by white critics and 78% by men.
See, nobody cares.
With its more relaxed criteria, Rotten Tomatoes gave the critical conversation a hard push in the direction of inclusion, declared the New York Times. See, that it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what you think!
If you wanted to review movies, you could always review movies. Unless you're a complete idiot who wants to play victim and hide behind a wall of fake oppression.
You stupid son of a bitch.
There you have it, folks. Some of the bullet points from the Vulture article, which I'll link in the description. So if you want to read through the entirety of that word salad, the bottom line is paying a PR firm to influence scores on Rotten Tomatoes when Rotten Tomatoes was so worried about the authenticity of their scores when it came to certain movies. Certain movies had to be protected because God knows if they got bad reviews, lives were going to be lost, like Eternals and Captain Marvel and Ghostbusters 2016 and all the other shit they've shoveled out, Last Jedi, all the other trash that they shoveled out into the cinema, onto streaming services, and told us that we were bad people if we didn't like it. And the reviews were strong and all the scores were positive and you were just a neckbeard incel man baby if you didn't like these movies. No, scores were manipulated. If you looked at them and thought, wow, maybe I'm wrong. No, they were manipulated by pay-to-play critics is the crux of the issue on Rotten Tomatoes, which we all know is a garbage site. It's there for suggestions only and for us to use as fodder in material for videos such as this one right here, which I hope you enjoyed. Now leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of the entire situation, the pay-to-play? Did you see it coming? Did you know it was there all along? Because a lot of us speculated and then we were called conspiracy theorists. Imagine that! Well, a plot cooked up by people in Hollywood and then we get called conspiracy theorists for calling it out, and then it comes to fruition years later to the sound of nothing. No haha, no victory lap, except by people like me who are just basically telling our subscribers this, which is funny. So leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't. Ding the bell for notifications so you know when we go live. One of our 4 weekly live streams, Monday, Wednesday, member stream on Thursday, Saturday night's main event to cap it all off on Saturday night. I'm Etep from the Place to Be Reviews. I've been here with all of you. If I don't see you, have a great day, a pleasant tomorrow, and I will catch you on the next one. Thank you.